What if Daenerys Targaryen landed in Westeros with 3 dragons during Ned Stark's trial? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The great sept of Baelor rises like a pale mountain against the morning sky, its 7 crystal towers catching the early light. Thousands of small folk pack the plaza before its steps, their voices a low murmur that echoes off the stone walls. They have come to witness justice, though few understand what justice means when kings are children and queens speak with golden tongues. Ned Stark stands at the top of the sept's steps, his hands bound with iron chains. The Lord of Winterfell looks smaller than he did in the Red Keep's throne room, his grey head bowed low. Sir Ilyn Payne waits behind him, ice heavy in his hands. The great sword seems wrong in the executioner's grip, its Valyrian steel meant for nobler purposes than this. King Joffrey sits on a makeshift throne, his crown gleaming in the sun. The boy king leans forward eagerly, his green eyes bright with anticipation. He has dreamed of this moment since his father's death, the moment when all of Westeros will see what happens to those who challenge his rule. "Bring him forward," Joffrey commands, his voice carrying across the plaza. The gold cloaks shove Ned toward the center of the steps. His leg buckles slightly from his old wound, but he catches himself. The crowd falls silent as the scepter steps forward with her scroll of charges. "You stand accused of treason against your rightful king," she begins, her voice echoing off the sept walls. "You plotted to deny Prince Joffrey his rightful throne. You conspired with his enemies. Do you confess your crimes?" Ned raises his head slowly. His grey eyes find Sansa in the crowd below, standing between 2 Kingsguard. His daughter's face is streaked with tears, her hands clasped together in prayer. Somewhere in the mass of people, he knows Arya is watching too, though Yoren has hidden her well. Ned's voice catches, the words taste like poison in his mouth. "I am Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Hand of the King. I served King Robert for 15 years, and He stops. The crowd leans forward, hungry for his words. "Speak up," Joffrey shouts. "Let them all hear your treason." "I betrayed my king's trust," Ned says, each word falling like a stone. "I plotted to steal his son's rightful throne. I am guilty of treason." The crowd erupts. Some shout in anger, others in triumph. Joffrey claps his hands together like a child at a puppet show. Cersei watches from her seat, her green eyes calculating. This is going exactly as she planned. "The traitor has confessed!" Joffrey rises from his throne, pointing at Ned. "As your king, I sentence you to—" A shadow passes over the plaza, then another. The crowd looks up as one, their shouts dying in their throats. 3 shapes circle overhead, black against the blue sky. They move with impossible grace, their wings cutting through the air like ships' sails. But these are no ships. "Dragons," someone whispers. The word spreads through the crowd like wildfire. "Dragons! Impossible. Dragons are dead. Dragons died with the Targaryens. Dragons are legend and song, and children's tales. But the creatures above are no legends. They are real, and they are descending. The largest dragon lands first, its claws scraping against the stone steps. It is black as night, with red eyes like molten steel. Steam rises from its nostrils as it settles its wings against its back. The crowd screams and surges backward, people trampling each other in their terror. The second dragon, scales of cream and gold, perches on the sept's roof. The third, green as summer grass, circles once more before landing in the plaza itself. The gold cloaks draw their swords, but make no move to advance. What use is steel against dragonfire? A figure slides down from the black dragon's back. She is small and young, with silver-gold hair that catches the light like spun moonbeams. Her skin has the olive tone of old Valyria, and her violet eyes burn with an inner fire. She wears riding leathers of black and red, the colours of her house. Daenerys Stormborn steps between Ned Stark and Ser Ilyn Payne. "I am Daenerys Targaryen," she says, her voice carrying across the stunned silence. "Daughter of King Aerys, sister to Prince Rhaegar, rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms." She looks directly at Joffrey, who has gone pale as milk. "And you, boy, are sitting on my throne." The plaza erupts in chaos. Some people flee screaming into the side streets. Others fall to their knees, whether in worship or terror. None can say. The gold cloaks look between their commanders and the dragons, unsure whether to attack or surrender. Joffrey finds his voice first. "Seize her!" he screams, spittle flying from his lips. "She's a pretender, a witch. Kill her and her monsters." But no one moves. The gold cloaks' hands shake on their sword hilts. The Kingsguard shift nervously, their white cloaks fluttering in the wind from the dragon's wings. Even Ser Ilyn Payne has lowered ice, his dead eyes fixed on the creatures surrounding them. Daenerys turns to Ned, who stares at her in wonder and confusion. "Lord Stark," she says quietly, "you served my father's kingdom faithfully, even when it was ruled by usurpers. I would not see you die for speaking truth." You're supposed to be dead," Ned manages. "Many things are supposed to be dead, my lord." Daenerys' eyes flick to the dragons around them. "Yet here we stand." She raises her voice so all can hear. "I have come to reclaim what was stolen from my family. But I am not my father. I do not wish to rule over ashes and bones." The black dragon behind her raises its head and roars. The sound echoes off every building in King's Landing, a challenge that can be heard from the Red Keep to Flea Bottom. Windows shatter in the nearby houses. Horses bolt in terror. Even the bells of the sept seem to tremble. Joffrey has fallen back into his throne, his crown askew. Cersei grips the arms of her chair, her knuckles white. The carefully orchestrated execution has become something else entirely. "The realm bleeds," Daenerys continues, her voice cutting through the dragon's roar. "Brother fights brother, while the real threats gather in the shadows. This ends now." She gestures to Ned. "Remove his chains." "You have no authority here," Joffrey shouts, but his voice cracks like a boy's. Daenerys smiles, and there is something terrifying in the expression. "I have 3 dragons, Your Grace. What authority do you have?" The standoff stretches like a bowstring, drawn taut. Gold cloaks surround the plaza, but their spears seem like toothpicks against the dragon's hides. The crowd watches in hushed awe, witnessing the return of magic to a world that had forgotten it was ever real. In the distance, bells begin to toll across King's Landing. Not the wedding bells or funeral bells the people know, but something new and urgent. The sound carries a single message to every corner of the city. Everything has changed. Ned Stark stands in his chains between a boy king and a dragon queen. And in this moment, the fate of Westeros hangs in the balance. Fire has returned to the Seven Kingdoms, and with it, the promise that nothing will ever be the same. The silence stretches across the Great Sept's plaza, like the moment before lightning strikes. 3 dragons perch around the holy ground, their eyes fixed on the throne where a boy king sits frozen in terror. Steam rises from their nostrils in the morning air, and the scent of sulphur drifts through the crowd. Cersei Lannister rises slowly from her chair, her mind racing through possibilities. Everything she has built, every careful plan, every whispered promise hangs in the balance. The dragons change everything, but she has not survived this long by accepting defeat. Her green eyes fix on Daenerys with calculation rather than fear. "Guards!" Cersei calls, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Escort our unexpected guest to the Red Keep. I'm sure she's tired from her long journey. She speaks as if addressing a minor lord's daughter, rather than someone who just landed 3 dragons in the capital. Joffrey whips around to stare at his mother. "Are you mad?" he shrieks. "She threatened me. She claims my throne. Kill her. Kill them all." His voice rises to a near scream, spittle flying from his lips. The boy king's face has gone red with rage, his hands gripping the arms of his makeshift throne. The black dragon behind Daenerys lifts its head at Joffrey's outburst. Its red eyes focus on the young king, and a low rumble builds in its chest. Several gold cloaks step backward involuntarily, their hands trembling on their weapons. "Drogon," Daenerys says quietly, and the dragon settles. The ease of her command sends murmurs through the crowd. This is no wild beast, but a weapon that responds to her will alone. Ned Stark watches the exchange with wonder and growing hope. Minutes ago he was prepared to die, his honor sacrificed to save his daughter's life. Now he stands witness to something that should not exist, watching a silver-haired girl command creatures of legend. But there is steel in her young face, and he recognizes the look of someone who has seen too much, too young. "Your Grace." Varys steps forward from the crowd of courtiers, his soft voice carrying clearly across the plaza. The spider's face shows nothing but mild curiosity, as if dragons appear in King's Landing every day. "Perhaps we might discuss this matter somewhere more private." The people grow restless. Indeed, the crowd has begun to shift and murmur. Some kneel in the ancient fashion, remembering stories their grandfathers told of when dragons ruled the sky. Others push toward the side streets, desperate to escape before dragonfire turns the plaza to ash. But many remain, transfixed by the impossible sight before them. Littlefinger stands near the edge of the crowd, his grey-green eyes moving between Daenerys and the political players around the throne. Already, he calculates new possibilities, new alliances to pursue. The game has changed completely, but there is always profit in chaos for those clever enough to see it. "The people have a right to witness justice," Daenerys replies, her violet eyes never leaving Joffrey's face. They came here expecting to see a good man die for speaking truth. Instead, they will see the beginning of a new age. The green dragon on the roof spreads its wings, casting shadows across the plaza. Several windows in the nearby buildings suddenly fill with faces, as more people realize what is happening below. The news will spread through King's Landing like wildfire. The dragons have returned. Jorah Mormont appears at the edge of the plaza, moving through the crowd with careful purpose. The exiled knight's bare head pommel catches the light as he keeps his hand on his sword hilt. Behind him come a dozen Dothraki warriors, their curved araks gleaming. They move like wolves among sheep, and the crowd parts before them. "Khaleesi!" Jorah calls as he approaches the dragons. His weathered face shows relief at finding Daenerys safe, but his eyes survey the political trap she has walked into. "The horses are secured. Your blood riders await your orders." The appearance of foreign warriors sends another ripple through the crowd. These are not the civilized knights of Westeros, but something more primitive and dangerous. Their bronze skin and black hair mark them as strangers, and the ease with which they move suggests they are far from helpless in this strange land. Cersei's jaw tightens at the sight of more armed men loyal to the Dragon Queen. Her carefully maintained control of the capital suddenly seems fragile as spider's silk. "Lord Janos," she calls to the commander of the Gold Cloaks, "how many men do we have in the plaza?" Janos Slint's pock-marked face is pale with sweat. 200, Your Grace. Maybe more in the surrounding streets. He does not mention that half his men look ready to bolt at the first sign of dragonfire. "Against 3 dragons and their riders," Ned says quietly, his voice carrying a note of dry humor despite his chains. Bold odds, even for Lannisters. Daenerys turns to look at the Lord of Winterfell properly for the first time. She sees a man older than her father was when he died, but with the same grey eyes as the Stark children she has heard stories about. There is honor in his face, and weariness, and something else she recognizes. The look of someone who has tried to do right in a world that punishes such attempts. "You are not what I expected, Lord Stark," she says. "The stories speak of the quiet wolf, but they do not mention your courage in speaking against powerful enemies." "Courage had little to do with it, Your Grace." Ned's voice carries the weight of regret. "I was played by cleverer minds than mine." The admission draws sharp looks from both Cersei and Littlefinger. In those few words, Ned has revealed more about the game behind his fall than hours of testimony could provide. Daenerys files the information away, her mind already working through the implications. "Mother," Joffrey hisses through gritted teeth, "do something. She mocks me before the whole city." But Cersei is already calculating her next move. Open confrontation with dragons is suicide, but there are other weapons in her arsenal. "Your Grace," she addresses Daenerys with honeyed venom, "your arrival is dramatic. But surely you understand that legitimate succession requires more than terror. The realm has laws, traditions, order." "Order?" Daenerys' voice carries a note of amusement. "I see a boy calling himself king while his regent orchestrates the murder of honest men. I see gold cloaks who serve gold instead of justice. What order is this, Lady Lannister?" The crowd stirs at her words. Many remember the old tales of dragons and justice, of kings who ruled for the people rather than themselves. But others remember the Mad King's reign, when dragonfire burned innocents in the throne room's flames. A raven circles overhead, its black wings catching the morning light. Soon all the realm will know that dragons have returned to Westeros. In the north, Robb Stark will receive word that his father lives. In the Reach, lords will remember their ancient oaths. In Dawn, old hatreds and older dreams will stir to life. The realm will not accept Targaryen rule again, Cersei says, her voice growing harder. Too much blood has been spilled. Too many have died. Robert's rebellion was built on lies, Daenerys interrupts. Lies about my brother, lies about my father, lies about the realm needing saving from dragons. She gestures to the crowd around them, many of whom still kneel in the ancient gesture of loyalty. "Look at them, Lady Lannister. Do they seem afraid of their rightful queen?" The cream and gold dragon on the roof lets out a musical trill that echoes off the buildings. Some in the crowd smile at the sound, despite their fear. There is beauty in these creatures as well as terror, grace as well as power. Varys watches the exchange with growing interest. The Dragon Queen is young, but she speaks with authority beyond her years. More importantly, she understands the game being played around her. This is no naive child to be manipulated, but a player in her own right. "The question remains," Littlefinger says smoothly, stepping forward with his most charming smile. "What does your grace intend? The realm is at war. The North has declared independence. The Baratheon brothers gather their forces. Surely wisdom suggests that I stop the bleeding before it spreads further," Daenerys cuts him off. "3 dragons ended the wars that came before. 3 dragons can end the wars that threaten now." The black dragon raises its head and roars again, the sound rolling across King's Landing like thunder. In response, war horns begin to sound from the Red Keep's walls. Someone is taking no chances, calling all available forces to defend the capital. But defend against what? The dragons are already here, their riders standing in the heart of the city. The game has changed, and every player must decide whether to adapt or be swept aside by the flames of a new age. The Iron Throne looms in the shadows of the Red Keep's great hall, its twisted metal edges catching the light from the high windows. Swords of conquered kings jut out at cruel angles, a monument to Aegon's conquest built from the weapons of the defeated. Today it seems to wait for a new occupant, though the boy who sits upon it clings to its armrests like a drowning man to driftwood. Daenerys Targaryen walks down the long aisle between the columns, her footsteps echoing off the stone floor. Behind her, Jorah and 6 Dothraki warriors maintain careful formation, their hands never far from their weapons. The dragons remain outside in the courtyard, but their presence fills the hall like smoke. Everyone can feel them through the walls, a weight pressing against the very foundations of Lannister power. Joffrey squirms on the Iron Throne, his crown slightly askew from their hurried journey from the plaza. The boy king's green eyes dart between Daenerys and the armed men following her. Cersei stands at the foot of the throne, her face a mask of controlled fury. She has agreed to this meeting, but only because the alternative is dragonfire in the streets of King's Landing. "Your Grace," Daenerys says, stopping 20 paces from the throne. Her voice carries clearly through the hall, formal but not deferential. "I thank you for receiving me in your father's hall." The subtle correction draws sharp intakes of breath from the assembled courtiers. She does not acknowledge Joffrey as rightful king, but neither does she openly challenge him. Not yet. "You will address his grace as your majesty," Cersei snaps, her green eyes flashing, "and you will explain this invasion of our capital." Daenerys turns her violet gaze on the Queen Regent. "I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen. My family built this throne, ruled from this hall for 3 centuries. I have not come to invade, Lady Lannister. I have come home." Varys glides forward from the shadows near the pillars, his soft-soled shoes making no sound on the stone. The spider's bald head gleams in the filtered sunlight as he offers a slight bow. "Your Grace honors us with her presence, though I confess the circumstances of your arrival were unexpected." "Were they?" Daenerys asks, a slight smile playing at her lips. "I was told the realm bleeds, Lord Varys, that brother fights brother, while the true threats gather strength. Did you not expect someone to notice?" Littlefinger steps forward with his most charming expression, though his grey-green eyes remain calculating. "The realm does indeed face challenges, Your Grace, but surely wisdom suggests that adding another claimant to the crown only increases the chaos." "I do not add myself to anything, Lord Baelish." Daenerys' voice grows colder. "I am the rightful queen of the 7 kingdoms by law, by blood, and by right of conquest. The question is not whether I have a claim, but whether others will acknowledge it or face the consequences of continued rebellion." Joffrey finally finds his voice, though it cracks slightly with anger. "You dare call me a rebel? I am King Joffrey of House Baratheon, first of his name. My father won the crown in battle." "Your father," Daenerys says quietly, "won a crown through rebellion against my family. That does not make his claim legitimate, merely successful. For a time." Her eyes fix on Joffrey with uncomfortable intensity. "But we both know Robert Baratheon was not truly your father, don't we?" The silence that follows is deafening. Cersei's face goes white, then red with fury. Several courtiers exchange nervous glances. The truth that Ned Stark died trying to reveal hangs in the air like an executioner's blade. "How dare you spread such vile lies?" Cersei shouts, her composure finally cracking. "Guards, arrest this pretender!" But no guards move. The gold cloaks in the hall look uncertain, their loyalty wavering in the face of 3 dragons and the uncomfortable truths being spoken. Some remember their oaths to the realm, not just to whoever sits the throne. "The truth is not a lie, Your Grace." Daenerys pulls a scroll from her riding leathers. "I have here a copy of the findings of Lord Jon Arryn, former hand of the king, the same findings that led to Lord Stark's investigation. Shall I read them aloud?" Ned Stark watches from his position near the wall, still in chains but no longer scheduled for execution. His grey eyes show a mixture of gratitude and concern. This young woman has saved his life, but the game she plays is dangerous beyond measure. "Release Lord Stark," Daenerys commands, her voice carrying the authority of dragonfire. "He has done nothing but serve the realm with honor. His only crime was speaking truth in a city built on lies." "I will not!" Joffrey shrieks, leaping to his feet. The Iron Throne's edges scrape against his clothes as he rises. "He is a traitor. He confessed." "He confessed to save his daughter's life," Daenerys replies calmly. "Any father would do the same. Release him, or I will consider it an act of hostility toward my house." The threat hangs in the air like the promise of storm. Through the windows, one of the dragons calls out, its voice echoing across the Red Keep's courtyards. The sound serves as a reminder that Daenerys does not make idle threats. Cersei's mind races through options, but each path leads to the same conclusion. She cannot fight dragons with words or gold. "Release him," she says through gritted teeth. A gold cloak captain steps forward reluctantly and begins unlocking Ned's chains. The iron falls away with a clatter that echoes through the hall. Ned rubs his wrists where the metal has chafed the skin, but his eyes remain fixed on Daenerys with wary respect. "Now," Daenerys continues, "I would see Lord Stark's daughters. Both of them." "Sansa is here," Cersei admits, "but the younger girl, Arya, she disappeared during the confusion at the Sept." Daenerys' expression grows cold. "Find her. Immediately. No harm will come to either child while they remain under my protection." Within moments, Sansa enters the hall flanked by 2 Kingsguard. The girl's blue eyes are red from crying, but she maintains her composure as she approaches her father. The reunion is quiet, but emotional, Ned placing a protective arm around his daughter's shoulders. "And Arya?" Daenerys asks. Yoren appears from a side passage, the Night's Watch recruiter's black clothes marking him clearly in the ornate hall. In his wake comes a small figure in boy's clothes, but Daenerys sees through the disguise immediately. Arya Stark's grey eyes are fierce with barely contained emotion as she runs to embrace her father and sister. "The Stark family is reunited," Daenerys observes with satisfaction. "A good beginning." Meanwhile, far to the west, a raven arrives at Harrenhal bearing urgent news. Tywin Lannister reads the message twice before his weathered hands crumple the parchment. Dragons. In King's Landing. His grandsons threatened and his daughter outmaneuvered by a girl barely old enough to rule a household, let alone 7 kingdoms. "Sir Keevan," he calls to his brother, "send word to all our bannermen. We march on King's Landing immediately." Back in the throne room, Daenerys approaches Ned Stark directly. "Lord Stark, I would speak with you privately. There is much we must discuss about the realm's future." Ned nods slowly. "Your Grace honors me. Though I confess, I am not certain what wisdom I can offer. My last attempt at politics nearly cost me my head." "Perhaps," Daenerys says with a slight smile, "but it nearly cost you your head because you served truth over power. That is exactly the kind of counsel I need." They move to a side chamber, leaving the throne room in tense silence. Through the windows, the dragons can be seen settling in the courtyard, their presence a constant reminder that the game has changed forever. "Tell me, Lord Stark," Daenerys begins, once they are alone, "what would you have me do? Take the throne by force and rule through fear, or find another way?" Ned considers her question carefully. "The realm is tired of war, Your Grace, but it is also tired of being ruled by those who care nothing for justice. If you can offer both peace and justice," he pauses, "that would be something new under the sun." "The small council will need rebuilding," Daenerys muses. "Men of honor, rather than ambition. Would you consider serving as Hand again?" Ned's grey eyes widen slightly. "Your Grace, I am not certain." "Think on it," she says gently. "The realm needs good men in positions of power, and I need advisors who will speak truth, even when it is unwelcome." Outside, the bells of King's Landing begin to ring again, but this time they carry news of change rather than death. The dragons have returned to Westeros, and with them, the possibility of something the realm has not seen in years, hope for a better future. But in the distance, the thunder of approaching horses suggests that not everyone welcomes this change. The Lannisters are coming, and they bring war in their wake. The spider weaves new threads in the shadows of the Red Keep. Varys moves through the castle's hidden passages with practiced silence, his soft shoes making no sound on the ancient stones. The Master of Whisperers has served 3 kings, but tonight he prepares to offer his services to a queen who commands dragons. The game has changed, and those who cannot adapt will find themselves swept aside by dragonfire. He finds Daenerys in the Tower of the Hand Solar, studying maps of the 7 kingdoms by candlelight. Jorah stands guard by the window, his weathered hand resting on his sword hilt. The exiled knight's eyes never leave the doorway, even when addressing his queen. "Your Grace," Varys says as he enters, offering a deep bow. "Might I have a word? I bring information that may prove illuminating." Daenerys looks up from the maps, her violet eyes sharp with interest. "Lord Varys, please sit. I confess I am curious about what the spider knows that others do not." Varys settles into a chair with careful grace, his hands folded in his lap. "The realm faces more threats than dragons and rival claimants, Your Grace. The Crown's finances are precarious." He produces a leather folder from his robes, filled with parchments marked with elaborate seals. King Robert left debts totaling more than 6 million gold dragons. The Iron Bank of Braavos grows impatient for repayment, and their methods of collection are unforgiving. Jorah steps forward, his brow furrowed. 6 million? How is that possible? Hands tournaments, royal feasts, gifts to lords and ladies, and... Varys pauses delicately. The late king's considerable appetites for wine, women, and spectacle. Lord Littlefinger managed the crown's finances with great creativity, but even his clever schemes could not conjure gold from thin air. Daenerys studies the documents with growing concern. And the Iron Bank? What happens when kingdoms fail to repay their debts? They fund the kingdom's enemies until a more reliable debtor sits the throne, Varys explains softly. The bank has been known to finance entire rebellions over unpaid loans. Your Grace's arrival complicates their calculations considerably. Meanwhile, in his own chambers, Petter Baelish writes letters by lamplight. His quill moves swiftly across expensive parchment as he reaches out to contacts throughout the realm. The Master of Coin has built his power on chaos and opportunity, and the dragon's arrival represents the greatest opportunity of his lifetime. "My lord," he writes to Lord Tyrrell, "circumstances in the capital have changed dramatically. The young queen appears reasonable, and her dragons make certain outcomes inevitable. Highgarden's early support would surely be remembered favorably." Similar letters flow to the Martells in Dorne, the Arryns in the Vale, and a dozen lesser houses whose loyalty might be purchased or persuaded. Littlefinger has survived 3 kings by always backing the winning side, and his instincts tell him the dragons represent the future. Far to the north, the wall stretches across the horizon like a white scar against the sky. Jon Snow stands atop the fortifications, his black cloak whipping in the cold wind. The bastard of Winterfell has just received the most shocking news of his young life. Dragons have returned to Westeros, and his father lives. "It cannot be true," he says to Sam Tarly, who clutches the raven's message with trembling fingers. "Dragons are extinct. They have been for 100 years. Sam adjusts his spectacles nervously, reading the message again. The raven came from King's Landing itself. "Jon, 3 dragons, they say, and a silver-haired queen who commands them." He looks up with wonder in his eyes. What if the old stories are true? What if magic is returning to the world? Master Aemon shuffles forward, his blind eyes turned toward the sound of their voices. The ancient Targaryen's weathered hands shake slightly as he speaks. A Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing. But a Targaryen with dragons. His voice trails off as old memories stir. Tell me everything the message says, Sam. Every detail. Jon listens as Sam reads the full account. The trial interrupted, the dramatic entrance, the dragons circling the great sept like creatures from legend, his father saved from execution by the last remnant of the family Robert's rebellion sought to destroy. What does this mean for the realm? Jon asks quietly. It means everything changes, Aemon replies. Everything. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon grinds his teeth as he paces the chamber of the painted table. The map of Westeros spreads before him, carved from wood and inlaid with precious metals. Red Melisandre watches from the shadows, her ruby glowing softly at her throat. Dragons, Stannis mutters, his jaw clenched tight. My brother's bastards sit on my throne, and now Targaryen whelps bring monsters to my kingdom. Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, stands with careful neutrality near the table. What are your orders, Your Grace? Do we still sail for King's Landing? Stannis stops his pacing, his eyes fixed on the carved capital on the map. We sail, but not to take the city by storm. The game has changed, but my claim remains stronger than any pretender's. I am Robert's brother, his lawful heir. No dragon changes that. Melisandre steps forward, her red robes rustling. The Lord of Light shows me great fires in my flames, Your Grace. Perhaps these dragons serve R'hllor's purpose as well as your own. Perhaps, Stannis says grimly. Or perhaps they simply burn everything in their path. Either way, I will not bend the knee to a child, dragon or no dragon. In the Reach, Renly Baratheon receives the news with very different emotions. The younger Baratheon brother sits in his pavilion, surrounded by rainbow banners and the flower of southern chivalry. Unlike his dour older brother, Renly sees opportunity where Stannis sees only obstacles. Dragons! He exclaims to Loras Tyrell, his young lover, polishing his armor nearby. Can you imagine? True dragons, returned after all these years. The songs they will write of this time. Sir Loras looks up from his work, his handsome face troubled. But what does it mean for your claim, my lord? If she truly has dragons, it means I must be very charming when I meet her, Renly replies with his easy smile. Dragons or no dragons, the realm still needs good governance, and who better to provide it than a king who understands both the necessity of power and the art of wielding it gracefully. He begins dictating a letter to his maester, his words flowing like honey over steel. To Her Grace, Daenerys of House Targaryen, he begins. I, Renly of House Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End and rightful King of the Seven Kingdoms, extend greetings and congratulations on your remarkable return to Westeros. Back in King's Landing, Varys continues his careful briefing of the Dragon Queen. Your Grace should know that several ravens have already flown from the capital tonight. Lord Baelish corresponds with many houses, as is his way. Not all of them mean you well. Daenerys nods thoughtfully. And what of the other claimants? Robert's brothers will not simply accept my arrival. Stannis Baratheon is inflexible, Varys explains. He believes completely in his own righteousness and will not yield willingly. Renly is more practical, but also more ambitious. Both command significant forces. How significant? Stannis has perhaps 20,000 men and the finest fleet in Westeros. Renly has gathered nearly 100,000 swords in the Reach, though their loyalty is more to gold and glory than to law. Jorah speaks from his position by the window. 100,000 men is a formidable army, Khaleesi. Even with dragons, those are dangerous numbers. Numbers matter less when castles burn, Daenerys replies, but her voice carries little enthusiasm for the prospect. Still, I would prefer to unite the realm rather than conquer it. Dead men serve no one well. Varys nods approvingly. Wisdom beyond your years, your grace. The realm has bled enough. Perhaps there is another way. What do you suggest? The spider leans forward slightly, his hands still folded. A great council, your grace. Summon all the great lords to King's Landing under guarantee of safe conduct. Let them see the dragons with their own eyes, hear your words with their own ears. Some will choose wisdom over warfare, and those who do not will face the consequences of their choice, Varys says simply. But at least they will have been given the opportunity to choose. Outside the window, one of the dragons calls into the night, its voice echoing across the silent city. The sound carries all the way to the harbor, where merchant ships prepare to sail with news of the Dragon Queen's arrival. By morning, every port in the known world will know that fire has returned to Westeros. The spider's web spreads wider, encompassing new players and possibilities, but at its center sits a young woman with silver hair and violet eyes, and around her circle 3 dragons that have changed the game forever. The question now is not whether the realm will accept her rule, but how many will die resisting the inevitable. In the small council chamber, empty now in the late hour, the painted ceiling shows dragons dancing in eternal circles above the council seats. Tonight, for the first time in 3 centuries, that ancient symbol carries the weight of living truth. The ancient stones of Castle Black have witnessed many partings, but few as painful as this one. Maester Aemon sits in his chamber, his blind eyes wet with tears he has not shed in decades. The last Targaryen draws shaking breaths as Jon Snow stands before him, torn between duty and blood, between the vows he swore and the family that needs him. "She lives," Aemon whispers, his voice barely audible above the wind howling through the shutters. "My brother's granddaughter lives, and she has brought dragons home." His weathered hands clutch a letter from King's Landing, the parchment crumpled from repeated readings. "In all my years, Jon Snow, I never dared hope." Jon shifts uncomfortably in the small chamber, his black cloak heavy on his shoulders. "Maester Aemon, I understand your joy. But the Night's Watch?" "The Night's Watch swore to guard the realms of men," Aemon interrupts, his sightless eyes turning toward Jon with uncanny precision. "If the old bear were here, if any of the men who have served on this wall could see what comes from the north, they would send our best to ensure the realm survives. The dead walk, Jon Snow. I have felt them in my dreams." The words chill Jon more than the northern wind. Reports from the ranging parties have grown stranger by the day. Wildlings fleeing south in panic, speaking of moving corpses and eyes like blue stars. Most of the watch dismisses such tales as superstition, but Jon has seen too much to doubt completely. "You think I should go south?" Jon asks quietly. Aemon nods slowly. "Your father sent word with the ravens. He asks specifically for you, Jon Snow. The realm faces threats from within and without. Perhaps your place is at his side, not on this wall." The decision tears at Jon's heart. His vows bind him to the Night's Watch until death, but his father has never asked for his help before. And now there is this Dragon Queen, this last Targaryen who might represent the realm's best hope for unity. "The men will call me Oathbreaker," Jon says. "Better a living Oathbreaker than a dead saint," Aemon replies with grim humor. "Go, child, learn what you can. If the realm falls to civil war, this wall means nothing. If it unites under dragon banners, perhaps there will be strength to face what comes from the true north." 3 days later, Jon rides south with a small escort of rangers, their black cloaks dark against the snow. He carries letters from Aemon to the Dragon Queen, sealed with the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen. The old master's final words echo in his mind. "Tell her she is not alone. Tell her that the last son of her house sends his love and his hopes." The journey to King's Landing passes in a blur of autumn roads and changing seasons. By the time Jon sees the Red Keep's towers rising above the capital, nearly a month has passed since the dragon's arrival. The city shows signs of change. Targaryen banners hang alongside Baratheon ones, and the small folk speak in hushed whispers of the Dragon Queen who freed Lord Stark and brought justice back to the throne. Jon arrives at the Red Keep as the sun sets behind the western hills, painting the sky the color of dragonfire. Guards in Targaryen colors escort him through courtyards where dragons once roosted 3 centuries ago. Now they roost again. He catches glimpses of massive forms in the shadows, scales glinting in the torchlight. Ned Stark waits in the Tower of the Hand, his face lighting with genuine joy at the sight of his bastard son. "Jon," he says simply, embracing the young man with obvious relief. "I was not certain you would come." "Maester Aemon insisted," Jon replies, studying his father's face. Ned looks older, but somehow lighter, as if a great weight has been lifted from his shoulders. "He sends letters for the Queen, and he wanted me to tell her. She is not alone." Ned's grey eyes grow thoughtful. "There are things we must discuss, Jon. Things about your mother, about who you are. But first you should meet her. She has been curious about you since my letters mentioned your existence." They walk through corridors Jon remembers from his only previous visit to the capital, but everything feels different now. The very air seems charged with possibility and change. Servants and guards nod respectfully to Ned, no longer the broken prisoner, but the restored hand of the Queen. The great hall has been transformed since Joffrey's reign. Targaryen tapestries hang from the walls, and candlelight flickers off dragon motifs worked into every surface. At the far end of the hall, near the Iron Throne, but not upon it, Daenerys Targaryen holds court with a small group of advisors. Jon stops breathing for a moment when he sees her. She is smaller than he expected, young and delicate-looking in her black and red riding leathers. But her violet eyes burn with an inner fire that speaks of steel beneath silk. Her silver-gold hair catches the light like spun moonbeams, and when she turns to look at him, Jon feels something shift in his chest. "Your Grace," Ned says formally, "may I present my son, Jon Snow. He brings greetings from the Night's Watch and from Master Aemon Targaryen." Daenerys rises from her chair with fluid grace, her eyes never leaving Jon's face. There is something in her gaze, a recognition that goes deeper than mere introduction. "Jon Snow," she says, and her voice makes his name sound like music. "I have heard much about you from your father." "Your Grace," Jon manages, offering a bow that feels clumsy beside her natural elegance. "Maester Aemon sends his regards and his blessing. He wanted you to know that you carry the hopes of your house." Emotion flickers across Daenerys' face at the mention of her great-uncle. "Is he well?" "I had thought. I was told no Targaryens survived Robert's rebellion." "He is very old but still sharp," Jon replies. "He serves the Night's Watch as Maester, as he has for most of his life. When he learned of your survival..." Jon pauses, choosing his words carefully. "I have never seen him weep before." The words hit Daenerys like a physical blow. She sits heavily in her chair, her composure cracking for a moment. Jorah steps forward protectively, but she waves him back with a small gesture. "Forgive me," she says quietly. "I have been alone so long. I had forgotten what it meant to have family." "You are not alone now," Jon says, and the words come from somewhere deeper than courtesy. "Whatever threats you face, the blood of the dragon does not stand without allies." Their eyes meet across the hall, and something passes between them that neither fully understands. Jon feels drawn to this silver-haired queen in a way that defies explanation, while Daenerys sees something in the bastard of Winterfell that calls to the lonely parts of her soul. Ned watches the exchange with growing interest and concern. There are forces at work here beyond politics and bloodlines, connections that run deeper than conscious thought. Perhaps, Daenerys says, her voice steadier now, you would join me for a walk in the courtyard? I find the dragons grow restless when confined too long indoors. They walk together through the Red Keep's gardens as stars begin to appear overhead. Drogon perches on a nearby tower, his red eyes following their movement. The black dragon makes no sound, but Jon can feel its attention like a weight on his shoulders. Your father speaks of you often, Daenerys says, as they pause near a fountain. He says you are a man of honor, despite your birth, or perhaps because of it. Jon's jaw tightens slightly. Bastards learn early that honor is all we have. We cannot inherit lands or titles, so we must earn our place in the world. I understand something of that struggle, Daenerys replies softly. I was sold to barbarians to buy my brother's army. I had to learn strength when I had none, find power when I was powerless. They stand in comfortable silence for a moment, two young people who have both known the weight of others' expectations and the pain of being outsiders. Jon, Ned's voice calls from behind them. He approaches with careful steps, his face grave with unspoken thoughts. There are things about your birth, about your mother, that you deserve to know. Jon turns, his heart suddenly racing. All his life, he has wondered about the woman who bore him, the woman his honorable father would never name or discuss. What things? Jon asks quietly. Ned glances at Daenerys, who watches with obvious interest. Your mother was not a tavern wench or a camp follower, he begins slowly. She was someone important, someone whose name could have started wars. The words hang in the air like smoke. Jon stares at his father with growing intensity, while Daenerys' violet eyes sharpen with understanding. Before Ned can continue, Drogon calls out from his perch, a long, musical note that echoes across the courtyard. The black dragon spreads his wings and glides down to land near them, his massive head turning to study Jon with curious red eyes. That's unusual, Daenerys says softly. Drogon rarely approaches strangers without hostility. Jon stands perfectly still as the dragon moves closer, steam rising from its nostrils. There is something in the creature's gaze that seems almost familiar, as if it recognizes something in him that even he does not understand. The blood of old Valyria runs strong in dragons, Ned says quietly, his words heavy with implication. They know their own kind. The statement sends shockwaves through Jon's understanding of himself. He looks at Daenerys, who stares back with dawning comprehension, and then at the dragon, who continues to regard him with something approaching recognition. In the distance, another dragon calls, and then another. The sound carries across King's Landing like a herald of change, announcing that the blood of the dragon has found its way home at last. As the three figures stand in the courtyard surrounded by creatures of legend, the first pieces of a puzzle that will reshape the Seven Kingdoms begin to fall into place. Fire and ice, bastard and queen, the forgotten and the returned, all bound together by bonds deeper than law or custom. The game is changing again, and this time the dragons are not the only ones awakening to their true nature. The golden banners of House Lannister stretch across the horizon like a sea of silk and steel. 40,000 men camp in perfect formation outside King's Landing's walls, their armor gleaming in the morning sun. Pavilions marked with roaring lions rise in ordered rows, while mounted knights patrol the perimeter with disciplined precision. The largest tent sits at the center of the host, crimson and gold fabric snapping in the wind above the Lion of Casterly Rock. Tywin Lannister stands before a campaign table covered with maps of the capital, his weathered hands tracing the city's defenses with practiced eyes. The Lord of Casterly Rock has commanded armies for 40 years, but he has never faced dragons before. Still, he shows no fear as he studies the tactical situation, Fear is a luxury he cannot afford, not with his family held hostage by a silver-haired girl and her monsters. The walls are strong, Sir Kevan observes, standing beside his brother, but not strong enough to stop dragonfire. No, Tywin agrees quietly. But dragons have riders, and riders can be killed. The girl is young, untested in real war. We shall see how brave she is when 50,000 arrows fill the sky. Inside the Red Keep, the small council chambers have become a war room. Daenerys sits at the head of the table, her violet eyes studying reports from the battlements. Around her gather the unlikely allies who now serve as her advisors. Ned Stark, restored as Hand. Tyrion Lannister, who chose pragmatism over family. Varys, ever adaptable. And Jon Snow, whose presence has become increasingly important to both strategy and her personal peace of mind. 40,000 men, Jorah reports grimly, returning from his reconnaissance of the Lannister host. Well-armed, well-disciplined. Tywin has brought his best. And the gold cloaks? Daenerys asks. 6,000 in the city, perhaps 2,000 more we can trust completely, Ned replies. The rest will follow whoever they believe will win. Jon studies the map spread before them, his dark eyes tracing the positions marked by wooden pieces. The numbers favor them greatly. Even with the dragons, a siege could last months. Or minutes, Daenerys says softly. Dragons change the mathematics of war. Before anyone can respond, the great doors swing open. Tyrion Lannister enters with quick steps, his face grim despite his usual wit. The dwarf lord carries himself with more authority than his stature suggests, his mismatched eyes sharp with intelligence. My father requests parley, he announces without preamble. Under the traditional banners of truce, he wishes to discuss terms. Silence fills the chamber as the council considers this development. Tywin Lannister does not request anything lightly, and his willingness to negotiate suggests both strength and uncertainty. What terms could he possibly offer? Jon asks. The usual ones, Tyrion replies with dark humor. Our surrender in exchange for our lives. He's brought Jaime to sweeten the deal. My golden brother's life for the safety of King's Landing. Daenerys rises from her chair, decision crystallizing in her mind. Tell your father I will meet with him, but not in some pavilion where his guards outnumber mine. If he wants to speak with me, he can do so while looking up at my children. An hour later, Daenerys soars high above the Lannister army on Drogon's back, the black dragon's wings cutting through the autumn air like scythes. Below them, the ordered camps become a patchwork of tiny shapes, and 40,000 soldiers seem suddenly small and fragile. The other two dragons follow in formation, their presence casting shadows across the golden banners. Drogon circles the camp once, low enough that the wind from his wings sends pavilion walls flapping and horses rearing in terror. Soldiers point skyward with awe and fear, their disciplined formations wavering as they confront legends made flesh. Some draw their swords instinctively, but steel seems pathetic against creatures who could melt castle walls. Daenerys guides Drogon to land in the center of the camp, directly before Tywin's great pavilion. The black dragon settles with predatory grace, his red eyes fixed on the tent flaps. Steam rises from his nostrils as soldiers back away in careful formation, their spears held ready but useless. Tywin Lannister emerges with measured steps, showing no fear despite facing a creature that could burn him to ash with a breath. The Lord of Casterly Rock wears battle armor, polished to mirror brightness, the lion of his house worked in gold across his chest. Behind him comes Jaime, the Kingslayer's white cloak pristine, despite the military camp around them. Your Grace, Tywin says, with a formal bow that manages to be respectful without showing submission. You honor us with your presence. Daenerys remains mounted on Drogon's back, letting the height advantage speak for itself. Lord Tywin, I confess surprise at your arrival. Most lords send ravens before marching on the capital with armies. Most queens do not arrive unannounced with dragons, Tywin replies smoothly. Extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary responses. Indeed, Daenerys' voice carries clearly across the silent camp. I assume you have come to surrender your sword and bend the knee to your rightful queen? A flicker of what might be amusement crosses Tywin's weathered features. I have come to discuss the future of the realm, Your Grace. Specifically, the future of my family and my forces. Your family is safe in King's Landing, as they will remain so long as they offer no threat to the crown. Daenerys pauses, her violet eyes finding Jaime in the crowd. Though I understand Sir Jaime has been struggling with questions of honor and loyalty. Jaime steps forward, his hand resting on his sword hilt, but making no aggressive moves. The Kingslayer's green eyes show internal conflict as he looks up at the Dragon Queen. I swore an oath to protect the king, Your Grace, and the royal family. Which king? Daenerys asks quietly. The one whose throne was built on rebellion and murder? Or the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms? She leans forward slightly in her saddle. Tell me, Sir Jaime, when you killed my father, did you do it for honor or for gold? The question cuts through the camp like a blade. Jaime's face goes pale, then red with anger and old shame. I killed Aerys Targaryen because he planned to burn King's Landing and everyone in it. I saved 500,000 lives that day. And yet history calls you Kingslayer, not savior. Daenerys' voice softens slightly. Honor is complicated, Sir Jaime. The question is what you choose to do now, when the choice is clear. Before Jaime can respond, shouts echo from the direction of the Red Keep. Smoke rises from one of the towers, black against the blue sky. Drogon raises his head, sensing his rider's alarm through their bond. What is that? Tywin demands, his calm facade cracking slightly. Daenerys urges Drogon skyward without another word, leaving the Lannister army behind as she races toward the source of the smoke. Her heart pounds with sudden fear. Cersei is still in the Red Keep, still desperate, still dangerous. Inside the Tower of the Hand, chaos reigns in Daenerys' private chambers. Cersei lies unconscious on the floor, a broken vial beside her hand. The Queen Regent's face is blue around the lips, foam speckling her mouth. Nearby, a food taster writhes in obvious agony, the poison meant for Daenerys having found the wrong victim. Maester, Ned shouts as he bursts into the room with Jon close behind. Get Grand Maester Pycelle now. Already here, my lord, the ancient Maester wheezes, his chains jangling as he kneels beside Cersei. Tears of bliss, I believe. Swift but not always fatal, if treated quickly. Jon stares at the scene with grim understanding. She tried to poison the Queen. And poisoned herself in the process, Ned observes. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so tragic. Daenerys arrives as Pycelle works over Cersei's prone form, forcing a foul-smelling antidote between the Queen Regent's blue lips. The Dragon Queen surveys the scene with cold fury, her violet eyes hard as amethyst. Will she live? Daenerys asks. Perhaps, Pycelle admits reluctantly. The dose was not large, and she received treatment quickly. But she will be unwell for some time. Good. Daenerys turns to Ned with decision crystallizing in her features. This settles the matter. I will not rule through fear and poison and betrayal. Lord Stark, you spoke once of a great council. Perhaps it is time to let the realm's lords decide their future for themselves. Ned's grey eyes show surprise and approval. Your Grace, that would be unprecedented in recent history. But it might be the only way to end this conflict without drowning the realm in blood. Then send the ravens, Daenerys commands, to every great house, every major lord. Tell them to come to King's Landing under guarantee of safe conduct. Tell them to bring their claims, their grievances, and their hopes for the realm. Let them see the dragons with their own eyes, and decide whether the past or the future serves them better. She walks to the window, looking out over the city where Lannister banners still fly alongside Targaryen ones. And tell Tywin Lannister that if he wants his daughter to live, he will keep his army in their camps and await the Great Council's decision. The realm has bled enough. It is time for wisdom to prevail over warfare. Jon moves to stand beside her, drawn by instincts he doesn't fully understand. And if the lords choose against you? Daenerys turns to look at him, her violet eyes holding depths of steel and fire. Then I will accept their decision and find another path. But first, they will see what I offer. Not conquest, but justice. Not fear, but hope for something better. Outside, Drogon calls from the courtyard, his voice carrying across King's Landing like a promise and a warning combined. The game has changed again, and this time it will be settled not by sword or fire, but by the collective will of the realm itself. The Great Council of 298 AC is about to begin, and with it, the first step toward a new kind of rule in the Seven Kingdoms. Dragons have returned to Westeros, but so has the possibility of justice chosen rather than imposed by force. The old lion waits outside the gates with his army, wondering if 40,000 swords can stand against 3 dragons and the power of a realm's choice freely made. Soon, he will have his answer. The Great Hall of the Red Keep has never witnessed a gathering like this one. Representatives from every corner of the Seven Kingdoms fill the vast chamber, their banners hanging from the ancient walls like a tapestry of power and ambition. The golden rose of Tyrell hangs beside the red sun and spear of Martell, while the sky-blue falcon of Arryn spreads its wings near the silver trout of Tully. Even the Iron Islands have sent an envoy, Balon Greyjoy's Kraken, displayed with maritime pride. 3 thrones have been placed before the assembled lords, each occupied by a claimant to the crown. Daenerys Targaryen sits in the centered chair, her silver-gold hair crowned with a simple circlet, bearing the 3-headed dragon. To her right, Joffrey Baratheon squirms in his seat, his golden crown slightly askew, and his green eyes darting nervously between the assembled great lords. To her left, Stannis Baratheon sits like carved stone, his jaw clenched, and his crown of black iron stark against his weathered features. Above them all, the Iron Throne waits empty, its twisted metal edges catching the light streaming through the hall's high windows. Today, for the first time in 3 centuries, the throne's next occupant will be chosen not by conquest or inheritance alone, but by the will of the realm's assembled nobility. Lord Tywin Lannister enters the hall with measured steps, his golden armor replaced by court attire that still manages to project authority. The old lion has agreed to this proceeding, though his 40,000 swords remain camped outside the city as a reminder of what awaits if diplomacy fails. He takes his place among the lords, his weathered face showing nothing of his thoughts. Ned Stark stands before the assembled crowd, the hands pin heavy on his chest. His voice carries clearly through the hall as he addresses the greatest gathering of nobles in living memory. "Lords and ladies of the 7 Kingdoms," Ned begins formally, "we gather today to address the question that has brought war to our realm. Who shall sit the Iron Throne? 3 claimants present themselves, each with arguments to make." He gestures toward the 3 chairs. By right of birth and blood, Daenerys of House Targaryen, daughter of King Aerys, sister to Prince Rhaegar. By right of succession, Joffrey of House Baratheon, proclaimed son of King Robert. By right of law, Stannis of House Baratheon, brother and heir to King Robert. The hall buzzes with murmurs as lords lean toward each other, weighing claims they have debated in private for weeks. Some faces show clear preference, others careful neutrality. The weight of decision presses down on them all. "Your Grace," Ned addresses Joffrey first, following the forms of precedence. "Present your claim to the assembled lords." Joffrey rises unsteadily, his voice cracking slightly as he speaks. "I am King Joffrey, first of my name, rightful heir to my father, Robert Baratheon. I have been crowned and anointed, blessed by the High Septon. The throne is mine by right." His words echo hollowly in the vast space. Several lords exchange glances, noting the boy's obvious nervousness and the tremor in his voice. Crown or no crown, he looks very young before this assembly of experienced rulers. "Your Grace," Ned turns to Stannis next. Your claim? Stannis stands with military precision, his words clipped and precise. I am Stannis Baratheon, rightful king of Westeros by law and custom. My brother Robert died without legitimate issue. I am his heir by every precedent in Seven Kingdoms history. I did not want this crown, but duty demands I claim it. The lords nod appreciatively at his directness. Stannis may be harsh, but no one questions his honesty or his understanding of law. His claim carries the weight of tradition and precedent. Finally, Daenerys rises with fluid grace. When she speaks, her voice carries the authority of dragons and the wisdom of someone who has earned power rather than inherited it. I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms. My family ruled here for 3 centuries before rebellion stole our throne. I haven't come to conquer, but to reclaim what was taken from my blood. More than that, I offer something new. A realm where justice matters more than birth, where the strong protect the weak instead of preying upon them. She pauses, letting her words sink in. I have seen slavery and broken its chains. I have faced the impossible and made it bow. 3 dragons follow me, not because I commanded them, but because they chose to. The realm bleeds from endless war and selfish ambition. I offer healing. The response is immediate and divided. Some lords lean forward with interest, others mutter among themselves with concern. The word dragon carries weight in every corner of the hall. Lord Mace Tyrell rises from his seat, his portly frame draped in green and gold. Your Grace speaks of justice and healing. What of the lords who fought against your family? What of those who served Robert Baratheon faithfully? I do not punish sons for their fathers' choices, Daenerys replies. Those who serve the realm faithfully will find me a faithful queen in return. I seek to unite, not to divide. Pretty words, calls out Lord Roose Bolton, his voice soft but carrying clearly. But what of proof? What evidence supports these claims? Ned steps forward, his face grave with the weight of what he must reveal. The question of proof brings us to uncomfortable truths, my lords, truths that King Robert died trying to hide. He produces several documents from his robes, their seals intact and official. The investigations of Lord Jon Arryn, confirmed by my own research and the work of Grand Maester Pycelle. The children claimed as Robert's heirs share none of his bloodline. Gasps echo through the hall as Ned continues. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are the children of Sir Jaime Lannister and Queen Cersei. Not one drop of Baratheon blood flows in their veins. The revelation hits like a thunderclap. Joffrey leaps to his feet, his face red with rage and humiliation. Lies! Vile lies, spread by traitors. But his denials ring hollow against the documentary evidence Ned presents. Birth records, witness testimonies, the clear physical evidence that even a child could see. Golden-haired children from a black-haired father, defying every law of inheritance. Stannis nods grimly, vindicated but taking no pleasure in it. I knew, he says simply. Jon Arryn died for discovering this truth. Lord Stark nearly died for it as well. Tywin Lannister's face remains impassive, but those who know him can see the calculations behind his eyes. His grandson's legitimacy destroyed, his family's position suddenly precarious. The evidence is clear, Lord Randall Tarly declares, his military bearing unmistakable. If the boy is base-born, his claim is void. Which leaves the Targaryen and Stannis, observes Lady Olenna Tyrell, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Law against blood, tradition against dragons. Daenerys speaks into the growing murmur of discussion. I propose we let the realm decide, not through sword or fire, but through the voices of its lords. Let this assembly vote, and let the winner rule with the consent of the governed. The suggestion sends ripples of shock through the hall. Never in the history of Westeros has succession been decided by vote. Kings rule by right or conquest, not by popular decision. Stannis frowns deeply. This is unprecedented, dangerous precedent. All precedents were unprecedented once, Daenerys counters. The realm has tried rule by right of conquest, rule by right of birth, rule by might of arms. Perhaps it is time to try rule by consent of the ruled. Tywin rises to address the assembly, his presence commanding immediate attention. "My lords," he says, his voice carrying the authority of decades of leadership. "We face a choice that will echo through history. I have seen war tear this realm apart. I have seen the cost of ambition and the price of pride." He pauses, looking directly at each claimant in turn. Stannis Baratheon is a good man, an honest man. He would rule justly but harshly. The realm would have order, but little mercy. His gaze shifts. Daenerys Targaryen brings dragons and speaks of justice. She offers change, but change carries risk. The old ways have failed us, but new ways are uncertain. Tywin's weathered hands clasp behind his back. Yet one thing is certain. Those dragons exist. They are real, and they answer to her will. 40,000 swords cannot fight fire made flesh. Whatever we decide here today, we decide knowing that reality. The pragmatism in his words carries more weight than any passionate speech. Lords throughout the hall nod slowly, recognizing the truth of what the old lion has said. "If we are to vote," Lord Tyrion says from his place among the assembly, "then let us vote with full knowledge. I have served with the Dragon Queen these past weeks. I have seen her rule, her judgment, her mercy. She freed Lord Stark rather than execute him. She tends the sick and hungry in Flea Bottom. She seeks counsel rather than demanding obedience." One by one, other voices join the discussion. Lord Davos speaks for Stannis with quiet conviction. Ser Jorah describes Daenerys' conquest of Slavers Bay and her liberation of the enslaved. Maester Qyburn presents the genealogical evidence against Joffrey's claim. Finally, Ned calls for the vote. "Lords and ladies of the Seven Kingdoms, speak your choice. Who shall sit the Iron Throne?" The responses come in order of precedence, each lord rising to declare their allegiance. The Tyrells choose Daenerys, drawn by her youth and her dragon's power to protect trade. Dawn follows, old hatred for Lannisters outweighing distrust of Targaryens. The Riverlands support their former enemy's daughter, swayed by Ned Stark's endorsement. The Vale declares for Stannis through Lord Jon Royce, honoring legal precedent. The Iron Islands surprisingly choose Daenerys, Asha Greyjoy speaking of the need for strength in changing times. The North follows Ned Stark's lead without question. When the count is finished, Daenerys has won by a substantial majority. The lords have spoken, and their voice is clear. "By the will of the assembled lords and ladies of Westeros," Ned declares formally, "I proclaim Daenerys of House Targaryen, the rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms." The hall erupts in mixed reactions, cheers from some quarters, resigned acceptance from others. Stannis nods curtly and removes his crown, setting it aside with visible relief. Joffrey storms from the hall, his mother following in his wake. Daenerys rises and walks to the Iron Throne, but she does not immediately sit. Instead, she turns to face the assembly. "I accept this crown, not as conquest, but as responsibility," she says clearly. "Today we have done something new. We have chosen our ruler. This great council sets a precedent that future generations may follow when succession is disputed. The realm belongs not to kings, but to the people who serve and support them." Only then does she ascend the throne, settling carefully among the twisted swords of conquest. But somehow, with her upon it, the Iron Throne looks less like a monument to domination and more like a seat of justice. The Great Council of 298 AC has ended, and with it, the old ways of determining royal succession. A new age has begun in Westeros, born not from dragonfire but from democratic choice. The lords have spoken, and their decision will reshape the Seven Kingdoms for generations to come. The bells of King's Landing ring out across the 7 hills, their bronze voices carrying news of a new age to every corner of the capital. In the great sept of Baelor, the same steps where dragons once interrupted an execution now host a coronation that will reshape the 7 kingdoms. Thousands of small folk pack the plaza, their faces upturned with hope and curiosity as they witness history unfold. Daenerys Targaryen ascends the sept steps in a gown of black silk embroidered with red dragons, the colors of her house restored to their ancient prominence. The High Septon waits at the altar, his crystal crown catching the morning light as he prepares to perform a ceremony not seen for 17 years. Behind the new queen, 3 dragons perch on the sept's towers like living gargoyles, their presence transforming the holy ground into something from legend. Daenerys of House Targaryen, the High Septon intones, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Do you solemnly swear to govern the peoples of the 7 kingdoms according to their respective laws and customs? I solemnly promise so to do, Daenerys replies, her voice clear and strong despite the weight of the moment. The ancient ritual continues, each vow binding her to the realm and its people. But when the moment comes to place the crown upon her head, she makes an unprecedented choice. Instead of Aegon's crown of Valyrian steel and rubies, she wears a simpler circlet of white gold set with 7 stones representing the 7 kingdoms. I will be the queen of all the realm, she declares as the crown settles on her silver gold hair. Not the conqueror, but the protector. Not the destroyer, but the builder of something better. Drogon raises his head and roars, the sound echoing off every building in King's Landing. The other dragons answer in harmony, their voices proclaiming the dawn of the 2nd Targaryen dynasty. But this time, the dragons sing not of conquest, but of hope. The ceremony concludes with traditional oaths of fealty from the assembled lords, but even this ancient ritual carries new meaning. Each lord who kneels does so by choice, their loyalty earned through democratic process rather than extracted through fear. Within days, the Red Keep transforms into the heart of an emerging administration. Daenerys wastes no time in addressing the practical challenges of rule, her small council chamber becoming the center of intense activity as ravens fly to every corner of the realm. Ned, she says, as the former hand takes his seat at the council table, the pin of office restored to his chest. You understand this realm better than anyone. Help me govern it wisely. Ned Stark accepts the responsibility with characteristic gravity. Your grace honors me. The realm faces many challenges. Robert's debts, the harvest concerns, the northern reports of unusual activity. Tyrion Lannister settles into the Master of Coin's chair with obvious relief at escaping his family's political disgrace. The Dwarf Lord's ledgers already show promising reforms to the Crown's finances. The Iron Bank has agreed to renegotiate the debt terms, Your Grace. News of dragons tends to encourage flexibility in banking arrangements. And my family? Tyrion asks carefully. Cersei and Joffrey have been difficult to manage since the Great Council. Daenerys nods thoughtfully. They will be escorted to Casterly Rock under honor guard. Exile, not imprisonment. Cersei remains a queen mother, and Joffrey, though illegitimate, is still a child who deserves the chance to grow beyond his mistakes. The decision surprises many in the chamber, but it reflects Daenerys' commitment to mercy over vengeance. Even defeated enemies will be treated with dignity in the new regime. The underground slavery networks, Jorah reports from his place at the table. We've identified 17 separate operations in Flea Bottom and the docks, hundreds of people held in bondage, most brought in through Pentoshi and Lysine connections. Daenerys' violet eyes flash with familiar fire. End it. All of it. Every chain broken, every slaver arrested. Compensation will be paid to the freed, and new laws will ensure it never returns to Westerosi soil. The abolition proves more complex than a simple decree. Former slaves need housing, employment, and protection from those who would re-enslave them. But within a week, Daenerys has established safe houses throughout the city and created work programs to help former bondsmen integrate into free society. Marriage alliances, Lady Olenna Tyrell observes during a private audience, her sharp wit undimmed by age. Your Grace is young, beautiful, and commands dragons. Every unmarried lord in the 7 kingdoms will be sending proposals. And every ambitious father with eligible sons, Daenerys replies with dry humour. What would you counsel, Lady Olenna? Marry for love if you can, for alliance if you must, but never for mere flattery, the Queen of Thorns advises. A strong queen needs a strong partner, not a decorative ornament. The advice proves prescient as marriage proposals arrive daily. Lords from the Reach offer vast wealth. Dornish princes promise exotic alliances, and northern lords suggest matches that would cement the realm's unity. But Daenerys finds her thoughts increasingly drawn to a different possibility entirely. Jon Snow stands guard duty outside the council chambers, his black cloak exchanged for the white of a new institution, the Queen's Guard, established to replace the corrupt King's Guard. His presence brings both security and an increasingly complicated set of emotions that neither he nor Daenerys fully understands. The reformation of the Royal Guard begins with Jaime Lannister's dramatic gesture. The Kingslayer requests a private audience with the new Queen, his golden hand clasped nervously as he prepares to speak words that will define his future. Your Grace, he begins formally, I have served 3 kings. I have broken the most sacred oath a knight can make. I have been called Kingslayer for 17 years, and the name has become part of me. Daenerys studies the golden-haired knight with thoughtful eyes. Yet you saved King's Landing from wildfire. You chose to protect innocents over honoring an oath to a madman. I did, Jaime admits, surprise flickering across his features, though few have ever seen it that way. Then perhaps it is time for new oaths, Daenerys suggests. Serve not blind loyalty to a crown, but justice for the realm. Protect not just royal blood, but innocent lives. Would you swear such an oath, Ser Jaime? The ceremony takes place in the throne room before the assembled court. Jaime kneels before the Iron Throne as Daenerys speaks words not heard before in Westerosi history. Do you swear to protect the innocent, defend the weak, and serve justice above personal ambition? I swear it, Jaime replies, his voice carrying new conviction. Then rise, Ser Jaime of the Queen's Guard. Let your past be redeemed by your future service. The moment transforms not just Jaime, but the institution he now serves. The new Queen's Guard will be bound by honor, not fear, serving ideals rather than individuals. The first formal small council meeting under the new regime addresses challenges both immediate and long-term. Grandmaster Pycelle, retained despite his age and past loyalties, presents concerning reports from the northern borders. Strange tales continue to arrive from beyond the wall, Your Grace, the ancient master wheezes. Wildlings fleeing south, speaking of the dead that walk, most troubling. Jon Snow, present as the Queen's advisor on northern affairs, confirms the reports. The Night's Watch grows concerned, Your Grace. These are not isolated incidents. Something is stirring in the far north, something that may threaten the entire realm. Daenerys listens with growing unease. Dragons may have conquered the south, but ancient evils still lurk beyond the edge of civilized lands. The realm she has united may soon face threats that make political conflicts seem trivial. Double the Night's Watch supplies, she decides. Send additional recruits, better weapons, warmer clothing. If the Watch protects the realm from northern dangers, then the realm must support the Watch. Meanwhile, ravens fly eastward, carrying news of the Targaryen restoration to the free cities and Slavers' Bay. In Meereen, former slaves celebrate their queen's triumph. In Pentos, merchants calculate new trading opportunities. In Braavos, the Iron Bank quietly approves of having a stable, dragon-backed regime to honor debt agreements. The response from Essos proves overwhelmingly positive. Daenerys' reputation as a breaker of chains and protector of the innocent has spread far beyond Slavers Bay, and many see her rise to the Iron Throne as validation of their own hopes for justice. The Dothraki Carls have sent gifts, Jorah reports with amusement. Horses, of course, but also pledges of friendship. They remember the Khaleesi who united their people. As the sun sets over King's Landing, Daenerys stands on the Red Keep's battlements, looking out over the city she now rules. The transition from claimant to queen has been smoother than anyone dared hope, but she knows greater challenges lie ahead. Jon joins her at the parapet, drawn by the same restless energy that seems to connect them more each day. Together they watch the lights of the capital flicker to life below, each glow representing lives now under their protection. "Do you ever wonder if we're making the right choices?" Jon asks quietly. "Every day," Daenerys admits, "but wondering means we care about getting it right. That has to count for something." The dragons circle overhead in the gathering dusk, their forms dark against the stars. Below them, a realm slowly heals from the wounds of civil war, guided by a queen who chose justice over revenge and unity over division. The second Targaryen dynasty has begun not with fire and blood, but with hope and healing. Yet in the far north, ancient evils stir, and the greatest tests of this new reign still lie ahead. For now, though, peace reigns in the Seven Kingdoms, and dragons soar over a united realm once more. The ravens from the north arrive with increasing frequency, their black wings heavy with news that chills the Red Keep more thoroughly than any winter wind. Daenerys reads each message with growing unease, the reports painting a picture of something stirring beyond the wall that defies all understanding. Dead men walking, blue eyes glowing in the darkness, ancient evils that should belong to children's tales, not the realm she has sworn to protect. Maester Aemon sits in the small council chamber, his blind eyes turned toward the window, as if he could see the northern threats gathering beyond his sight. The ancient Targaryen has made the long journey south from Castle Black, his aged body sustained by purpose and terrible knowledge that weighs heavy on his heart. "The prophecy speaks of ice and fire," Aemon says quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a century's learning. "A prince that was promised, born amidst salt and smoke, to wake dragons from stone and drive back the darkness. I have spent my life studying these words, wondering if they were myth or warning." Sam Tarly stands beside the old Maester, his arms full of ancient tomes and scrolls that smell of dust and forgotten ages. The young man's face shows exhaustion from his frantic research, but also excitement at the knowledge he has uncovered in the deepest vaults of the citadel. "The texts are clear, Your Grace," Sam says earnestly, opening a leather-bound volume with careful hands. "The long night came before. 8,000 years ago, darkness fell across the world for a generation. The dead walked, led by creatures of ice and malice. Only the combined strength of the first men and the children of the forest drove them back." Jon Snow paces before the chamber's great hearth, his face grim with the knowledge of what he has witnessed. The bastard of Winterfell has seen too much in his journeys beyond the wall to dismiss these reports as superstition or madness. "They call him the Night King," Jon says, his voice low with dread. "The rangers who have returned speak of a figure in ancient armor, riding a dead horse, commanding an army of wights that grows with every village they consume. The Watch has lost 3 patrols in the last month, alone." Daenerys rises from her chair, her violet eyes reflecting the firelight as she absorbs the implications. The throne she has fought so hard to claim suddenly seems insignificant beside this mounting threat. What good is ruling 7 kingdoms if there are no living subjects left to govern? "How many?" she asks quietly. "How large is this army?" "Thousands already," Jon replies grimly. "But that number grows every time they encounter the living. The dead do not tire, do not hunger, Do not fear. Every fallen enemy becomes a new soldier in their ranks. Tyrion shifts uncomfortably in his chair, his usual wit subdued by the supernatural nature of the threat they discuss. Surely there must be weapons, defenses, something that can stop them. The stories speak of victory before. Sam nods eagerly, flipping through his texts. Dragonglass, your grace. Obsidian. It shatters their forms, destroys the magic that animates them. The children of the forest used it extensively. And he hesitates, looking uncertain. Speak freely, Sam, Daenerys encourages. Valyrian steel, your grace. The ancient smiths knew secrets that have been lost. Their steel can cut through the ice that binds the dead. But there are so few blades left in the world. Ned Stark leans forward, his grey eyes thoughtful. We have some Valyrian steel in the north. Ice, the great sword of my house. A few other noble families possess ancestral blades, but not nearly enough to arm an army. The weight of the situation settles over the council chamber like a funeral shroud. Dragons may have conquered the south, but these ancient enemies present a threat that makes political conflicts seem like children's games. The prophecy speaks of dragons, Aemon says suddenly, his blind eyes turning toward Daenerys with uncanny precision. Dragons against the darkness, fire against ice. Perhaps this is why the gods brought you home, child. Not for the Iron Throne, but for this. Daenerys feels a chill that has nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. The old master's words carry the weight of destiny, suggesting that her entire journey has been leading to this moment of ultimate conflict. I need to see for myself, she decides abruptly. The reports, the texts, the stories, they help us understand the threat, but we need to know exactly what we face. Your grace, Jorah protests immediately. Beyond the wall is no place for a queen. The dangers are exactly why I must go, Daenerys interrupts firmly. I will not ask others to face what I will not face myself. And if dragons truly are the answer to this threat, then the dragons and their mother must see the enemy with their own eyes. Jon steps forward, his dark eyes meeting hers with determination. Then I go with you. I know the lands beyond the wall, and... He pauses, something flickering in his expression. Something about this threat calls to me. I cannot explain it, but I feel as if I must be there. The connection between them sparks again, that inexplicable bond that seems to grow stronger with each challenge they face together. Daenerys nods slowly, recognizing the truth in his words, even if neither understands its source. 3 days to prepare, she announces. We fly north at dawn on the 4th day. The preparations that follow transform the Red Keep into a center of frantic activity. Ravens fly to every corner of the realm, carrying warnings and requests for dragon glass, Valyrian steel, anything that might serve as weapon against the coming darkness. The great houses respond with surprising unity, even ancient enemies recognizing that no political grudge matters if the dead overrun the living. Tywin Lannister arrives from Casterly Rock with a wagon full of dragonglass artifacts, purchased from Dragonstone traders decades earlier. The Tyrells contribute gold to fund massive mining operations on the island where Stannis once held court. Even Dorne sends obsidian-tipped spears, their ancient arsenals proving unexpectedly valuable. On the morning of departure, Daenerys stands in the Red Keep's highest tower, watching the sun rise over a realm that may soon face its darkest hour. Drogon perches beside her, the black dragon's red eyes reflecting her own determination. Behind them, Rhaegal and Viserion wait with barely contained energy, sensing their mother's anticipation of the flight ahead. Jon appears at her side, dressed in thick furs and carrying a pack filled with supplies for the journey beyond the wall. His breath mists in the cold air as he studies the northern horizon with the eyes of someone who knows its dangers intimately. "Are you certain about this?" he asks quietly. "Once we cross the wall, there is no guarantee of safety, even for dragons." "Nothing is certain anymore," Daenerys replies. "But if we are to face this threat, we must understand it completely. The realm depends on what we learn." They mount their dragons in the courtyard as the sun climbs higher, watched by a crowd that has gathered to witness this unprecedented flight. Daenerys settles onto Drogon's back with practiced ease, while Jon takes his place behind her, his arms circling her waist for stability during the long journey ahead. The dragons launch themselves skyward with powerful wing beats, rising above King's Landing's towers and turning north toward destinations unknown. Below them, the Seven Kingdoms stretch toward the horizon, beautiful and peaceful in the morning light, unaware of the darkness gathering at their northern borders. The flight takes most of the day, the landscape gradually changing from the green fields of the riverlands to the grey stones of the north, and finally to the towering ice wall that has protected the realm for 8,000 years. The wall rises before them like a white mountain, its ancient magic still strong enough to make the dragons uneasy as they approach. Castle Black appears tiny against the wall's immensity, its black stones dark against the white ice. The Night's Watch garrison has assembled in the courtyard, their faces upturned in awe as 3 dragons circle the ancient fortress. For many of them, this is the first sight of the legendary creatures that have returned to the world. "Beyond," Jon says simply, pointing toward the wilderness that stretches endlessly north of the wall. That is where the true threat waits. They fly over the wall's crown, passing through the ancient barrier that has protected the realm since the last long night. The land beyond is a stark wilderness of snow and stone, beautiful but alien, touched by a cold that seems to seep into the bones despite the warmth of dragonfire. Hours pass as they soar over the trackless wastes, following Jon's directions toward the areas where rangers have reported strange activity. The sun begins to sink toward the western horizon, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of red and gold that should be beautiful, but somehow feel ominous. Then they see it. The army of the dead stretches across a valley like a dark stain upon the snow. Thousands upon thousands of wights march in perfect silence, their rotting forms moving with unnatural coordination. At their head rides a figure in ancient armor, mounted on a skeletal horse that shouldn't be able to move, yet somehow does. The Night King. Even from their height, Daenerys can feel the malevolent intelligence behind those blue eyes, the ancient hatred that drives this supernatural army toward the lands of the living. This is no mere beast or wildling raider, but something far older and more dangerous than anything she has faced. "Gods preserve us," Jon whispers, his voice barely audible above the wind. "There are so many." The Night King looks up as the dragons pass overhead, his ice-blue gaze meeting Daenerys' violet eyes across the distance. For a moment, time seems frozen as ancient enemies recognize each other across the vast gulf between fire and ice, life and death, creation and destruction. Then, the Night King raises one skeletal hand, and ice spears hurtle skyward with impossible speed and accuracy. Drogon banks sharply, narrowly avoiding the projectiles that could have brought them down in enemy territory. "We've seen enough," Daenerys shouts over the rushing wind. "Time to warn the realm." The flight back to Castle Black passes in grim silence, both riders lost in contemplation of what they have witnessed. The Night King's army is larger than the worst estimates, more organized than anyone feared, and commanded by an intelligence that makes it far more dangerous than mindless undead. That night, ravens fly south from the wall, carrying messages that will change everything. The threat is real, imminent, and beyond anything the Seven Kingdoms have prepared for. Political divisions mean nothing when faced with extinction itself. Daenerys stands atop the wall as stars appear in the darkening sky, looking south toward the realm she has sworn to protect. Behind her lies an army of the dead that grows stronger with each passing day. Ahead lies a kingdom that must unite or perish. The Iron Throne was never the real prize. she says quietly to Jon, who stands beside her in the cold wind. It was just the tool we needed to prepare for this. The prophecy, Jon replies thoughtfully. Ice and fire. Perhaps it was always about this moment, this choice between life and death. In the distance, wolves howl in the darkness, their voices carrying across the frozen wastes like warnings of the winter that is no longer coming, but has arrived at last. The war for the dawn is about to begin, and the fate of all life hangs in the balance. The Game of Thrones is over. The war for survival has just begun. The great hall of the Red Keep has never witnessed a wedding like this one. Lords and ladies from every corner of the Seven Kingdoms gather beneath dragon banners and winter roses, their faces reflecting both joy and gravity as they prepare to witness a union that will reshape the realm's destiny. The marriage of ice and fire is about to begin, though the bride and groom know their vows carry weight far beyond personal happiness. Daenerys Targaryen stands before the altar in a gown of white silk embroidered with silver dragons, the ancient crown of queens upon her silver-gold hair. Beside her, Jon Snow wears the black and red of House Targaryen, his bastard status forgotten in the face of greater purposes. Their hands are bound with silk cords, while the High Septon speaks words that echo with prophecy and promise. Do you, Daenerys of House Targaryen, take Jon Snow as your husband, to stand with you in light and darkness, in fire and ice, until the end of your days? I do, she says clearly, her violet eyes never leaving Jon's face. The vows feel both deeply personal and cosmically significant, as if the realm itself holds its breath waiting for their union. Do you, Jon Snow, take Daenerys of House Targaryen as your wife, to stand with her against all enemies, in war and peace, until death claims you both? I do, Jon replies, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Around them, the assembled lords bear witness not just to a royal wedding, but to the forging of an alliance that may determine humanity's survival. When their lips meet in the traditional kiss, dragons roar from the courtyard outside, their voices carrying across King's Landing like a proclamation to the world. The alliance of ice and fire is complete, and with it comes the hope that love might triumph over the approaching darkness. The celebration that follows is deliberately brief, as urgent matters press upon the new couple's attention. In the 3 days since their return from beyond the wall, ravens have flown to every corner of Westeros, carrying orders that will transform the realm into a fortress against the dead. 80,000 men march north from the Reach, Tyrion reports from his position at the War Council table, surrounded by maps, supply lists, and logistics calculations that would challenge even the most experienced quartermaster. Lord Randall Tarley commands the van, with 20,000 Tyrell household troops and their bannermen. The scope of the mobilization astounds even veteran commanders. Never in Westerosi history have so many forces been assembled for a single campaign, and never for a threat so alien to normal warfare. The Vale contributes 30,000, Ned adds, his weathered finger tracing troop movements on the great map. Lord Royce leads them personally, bringing the mountain clans as well. They know mountain fighting, which may prove valuable in the rough country north of Winterfell. Sansa Stark, arrived from Winterfell with her younger brother, provides updates on northern preparations. The northern lords are gathering at Winterfell as commanded, 25,000 spears, plus another 10,000 volunteers from the small folk. They remember the old stories better than most. But it is Bran Stark who provides the most crucial intelligence, his strange new abilities proving invaluable in understanding their supernatural enemies. The youngest Stark son sits quietly in his wheeled chair, his eyes distant as he perceives visions that span time and space. "The Night King moves south," Bran says in his eerily calm voice. "His army has grown. 40,000 whites now, maybe more. They march toward Eastwatch, where the wall is thinnest." His revelations send chills through the assembled commanders. but they also provide the tactical information needed to plan their defense. The war against the dead will be unlike any conflict in recorded history, but at least they will not fight it blind. In the great forges of King's Landing, smiths work day and night, creating weapons for the coming battle. The dragonglass quarries of Dragonstone operate without rest, producing thousands of arrowheads, spear points, and crude blades that can harm the supernatural enemy. Steam rises from the workshops as craftsmen race against time to arm the largest army ever assembled. Valyrian steel weapons are being distributed to the most experienced fighters, Gendry reports, his hands black with soot from the forges. The bastard blacksmith has proven invaluable in reforging ancient blades and creating new ones using secrets recovered from old texts. 53 blades total, including the great swords of the major houses. The preparation extends beyond mere weapons to the dragons themselves, who must learn to fight enemies, unlike any they have faced before. In the fields outside King's Landing, Daenerys works with her 3 children, teaching them to recognize and target the undead, while avoiding the ice spears that nearly brought them down beyond the wall. Drogon breathes fire in controlled bursts, learning to conserve his strength for prolonged combat. Rhaegal and Viserion practice evasive maneuvers, their riders coaching them through aerial tactics designed for supernatural warfare. The sight of dragons training for battle draws crowds from across the capital, their presence a reminder that hope still exists against impossible odds. The logistics alone are staggering, Tyrion mutters as he reviews supply requirements for the assembled forces. Feeding 150,000 men in winter in hostile territory while fighting enemies that don't require food or rest themselves. He takes a long drink from his wine cup before continuing. We need secure supply lines, defensive positions that can't be flanked by creatures that don't tire, and retreat routes that account for magical enemies. Jon studies the maps with the expertise of someone who has spent years beyond the wall. The Trident offers our best defensive position south of the wall, multiple river crossings, good sight lines, difficult terrain for large formations. If we can force them to attack across water... Water won't stop the dead, Bran interrupts quietly. They don't need to breathe. But it will slow them, channel them into killing grounds where dragonfire can be most effective. The conversation is interrupted by urgent reports from the wall itself. Maester Aemon's ravens bring news that chills everyone in the room. The ancient barriers are beginning to fail. The magic weakens, the old maester's letter reports. Ice forms where it should not. The wall itself grows brittle in places where the Night King's power touches it. We may have days, not weeks, before it falls completely. The news accelerates every preparation timeline. If the wall falls sooner than expected, the combined armies will need to march north immediately, ready or not. How long before all forces can concentrate at Winterfell? Daenerys asks, her voice tight with controlled urgency. 2 weeks for the full strength, Tyrion calculates. But we can have advance forces there in 5 days if we push hard. Then we march tomorrow, Jon decides. The Northern Lords can hold Winterfell's walls while we gather strength. Once the full army arrives, we advance to meet them at the Trident. That night, as the royal couple prepares for war rather than a traditional wedding night, disturbing news arrives from the far north. Scouts report the first skirmishes between dragons and the undead, as Daenerys had ordered reconnaissance flights to monitor the Night King's advance. Viserion encountered a patrol of wights near Last Hearth, Jorah reports grimly. The dragonfire destroyed them completely, but not before they fired ice spears. The dragon was wounded, though not seriously. The encounter provides both hope and concern. Dragons can indeed destroy the undead with their fire, but the enemy possesses weapons capable of bringing down even the legendary creatures. The coming battle will be far from one-sided. More troubling still are Bran's latest visions, which show the Night King himself studying the dragon's attack patterns from afar. The ancient enemy is learning, adapting, preparing counters to the fire that threatens his forces. He has been preparing for this for thousands of years, Bran says with disturbing calm. The long night was not a defeat to him, but a learning experience. He knows what dragons can do, and he is ready for them. As dawn breaks over King's Landing, the great mobilization begins in earnest. Columns of soldiers march north through the capital's gates, their armor gleaming and their banners flying proudly, despite the grim purpose of their journey. Knights of Summer ride beside grizzled veterans, while common spearmen march alongside lords who have set aside ancient feuds to face a common threat. The dragons circle overhead like guardians, their presence transforming the military procession into something from legend. Children point upward in wonder, while their parents pray to old gods and kneel for the protection of the realm. Daenerys and Jon ride at the head of the column, their marriage ceremony barely 12 hours old, but their partnership already tested by the weight of command. Behind them stretches an army unlike any in history, united not by conquest, but by necessity, armed not just with steel, but with hope. Whatever happens in the north, Jon says quietly as they pass through the city gates, we face it together. Fire and ice, united at last. The realm depends on us holding that unity, Daenerys replies, her eyes fixed on the northern horizon where destiny waits. Not just in battle, but in what comes after. Win or lose, the 7 kingdoms must emerge from this stronger than they entered it. The great army marches north through autumn fields that may never see another harvest if they fail in their mission. Behind them, King's Landing prepares for siege, while ahead of them, ancient evils gather strength for the final confrontation between life and death. The war for the dawn has begun, and with it comes the ultimate test of whether ice and fire together can triumph over the darkness that seeks to claim the world. In the distance, crows circle overhead like omens, their black wings stark against the grey sky that promises an early winter. The north remembers, and now all the realm marches to ensure that memory includes hope as well as fear. The wall dies with a sound, like the world breaking. 8,000 years of ice and magic collapse as the Night King raises his arms, ancient spells unraveling like torn silk. The thunderous crash echoes across the north as millions of tons of ice tumble into ruin, clearing the path that has protected the realm since the last long night. Where once stood an impregnable barrier, now lies a field of shattered crystal, beautiful and terrible in the pale morning light. From Winterfell's highest tower, Bran Stark watches through the eyes of ravens as the army of the dead pours through the breach. 40,000 wights march in perfect silence, their rotting forms moving with unnatural coordination across the frozen ground. At their head rides the Night King himself, mounted on a skeletal horse that should not move yet. Somehow does. They come, Bran says simply, his voice carrying across the courtyard where the combined armies of Westeros make final preparations for battle. The sight that greets the defenders defies every expectation of warfare. Soldiers from the Reach stand beside northern mountain clans, their golden roses bright against grey wolf banners. Dornish spearmen check their dragonglass points, while Knights of the Vale adjust armor that bears the falcon and moon. Never in history have so many enemies fought as allies, united by necessity against extinction itself. Daenerys soars overhead on Drogon's back, her silver hair streaming like a battle banner as she surveys the approaching threat. Beside her flies Rhaegal, Jon mounted on the green dragon's back, with long claw across his knees. The 2 dragons circle Winterfell's ancient walls, their presence transforming the castle into something from legend. "There!" Jon shouts over the rush of wind, pointing toward the southern horizon, where dark shapes move like shadows against the snow. The vanguard approaches. But as they watch, something else rises from behind the Night King's host. Wings spread wide against the grey sky, blocking out the weak sun with their span. Viserion climbs toward them. But this is not the cream and gold dragon they once knew. Ice crystals coat his scales, and his eyes burn with cold blue fire. The Night King sits astride his neck, ancient armor gleaming with frost. "He has a dragon," Daenerys breathes, horror and rage warring in her voice. "He killed my child, and made him into this abomination." The aerial battle begins without warning or ceremony. Ice dragon and fire dragons clash high above Winterfell, their roars shaking the ancient stones below. Viserion breathes not flame, but deadly cold, ice fire that can freeze a man solid in seconds. Drogon banks sharply to avoid the blast, responding with gouts of true dragonfire that turn snow to steam. Jon guides Rhaegal in from the side, trying to flank the corrupted dragon while Daenerys engages from the front. But the Night King proves a terrible adversary, his ancient intelligence directing Viserion with precision that matches or exceeds their own. Ice spears hurtle through the air as the undead dragon turns to face Rhaegal, forcing Jon to pull back or be impaled. Below them, the ground battle erupts as whites crash against Winterfell's walls like a tide of death. Archers loose volleys of dragonglass arrows that punch through rotting flesh and shatter the magic binding the corpses to unlife. But for every white that falls, 3 more press forward, their endless ranks showing no fear of death because they have already experienced it. Ned Stark leads the main defense from the courtyard, his voice carrying clear commands over the din of battle. Ice gleams in his hands, the Valyrian steel blade cutting through white after white as they breach the walls. Around him, the combined might of 7 kingdoms fights with desperate valor. "Hold the line!" Ned shouts as a section of wall crumbles under the weight of countless undead. "Fall back to the second defensive position. Dragonglass spears to the front." The retreat is orderly despite the chaos, northern discipline combining with southern tactics to create something neither could achieve alone. But the numbers are overwhelming. For every defender, there are 3 whites, and more arrive with each passing moment. High above, the dragon battle reaches its crescendo. Viserion grapples with Drogon in midair, claws and teeth seeking flesh, while riders struggle to maintain their seats. The Night King raises an ice spear, aiming for Daenerys' heart. But Jon drives Rhaegal into them from behind, disrupting the throw. "Now!" Jon yells, and Drogon breathes fire directly into Viserion's face. Ice melts and flesh burns, but the undead dragon's magic proves stronger than expected. Viserion recovers quickly, lashing out with talons that rake across Drogon's side, drawing blood from the black dragon's shoulder. In Winterfell's Godswood, Arya Stark moves like a shadow between ancient trees. The young woman has infiltrated behind enemy lines during the chaos, her needle-thin blade coated with dragonglass dust. She knows the stories, understands that cutting off the head will kill the snake, if she can reach the Night King. But first, she must survive the whites that patrol the edges of battle. Her blade dances through rotting flesh, each strike precise and deadly. The dancing master's lessons serve her well as she flows between grasping hands and rusted weapons, death itself made graceful and sure. Bran's consciousness flies across the battlefield, his ravens providing eyes where mortal sight cannot reach. But more than that, he fights his own battle in the realm of magic and memory. The Night King's power is vast but ancient, based on spells worked into the fabric of the world itself. If Bran can unravel even a portion of that magic, the psychic battle rages in dimensions beyond physical space as 2 minds clash across the boundaries of life and death. Bran draws on the power of every weirwood in the north, their collective memory pushing back against the Night King's influence. It is a battle of wills fought with weapons of pure thought. The tide of battle shifts when Tyrion's carefully planned defenses reveal their purpose. Hidden fire pits ignite throughout Winterfell's grounds, creating walls of flame that channel the whites into killing zones where dragonglass-armed defenders wait. The strategy works brilliantly for precious minutes, buying time and space for the dragons overhead. But the Night King adapts quickly, directing his forces to overwhelm the fire lines through sheer numbers. Viserion breaks away from the aerial combat to strafe the defenders below, ice fire turning brave soldiers into frozen statues in their final moments of defiance. He's targeting the command structure, Jon realizes, as he sees the pattern of Viserion's attacks. We need to draw him away from the ground forces. The decision that follows will echo through history. Rhaegal, wounded from the prolonged combat, makes one final charge at the ice dragon. Jon leaps from his saddle at the last moment, landing hard on Viserion's back as the green dragon sacrifices himself to bring down the corrupted beast. Both dragons crash into Winterfell's courtyard in a tangle of wings and flame, Rhaegal's noble sacrifice ensuring that Viserion can never rise again. The impact shakes the ancient castle to its foundations, but it also throws the Night King from his mount, leaving him vulnerable for the first time in the battle. Arya strikes in that moment of confusion. No one sees her coming, not even the Night King's supernatural senses, detecting the shadow that flows across the battlefield like death itself. Needle finds the gap in ancient armor, dragonglass piercing the heart that should have stopped beating millennia ago. The Night King turns to look at her with those terrible blue eyes, recognition and perhaps even admiration flickering in their depths. Then he shatters like ice in summer sun, his destruction sending shockwaves through every wight on the battlefield. The silence that follows is deafening. 40,000 corpses simply stop, their animating magic severed with their master's destruction. They collapse like marionettes with cut strings, leaving only the living to stand amid the carnage of the greatest battle in human history. Daenerys lands Drogon in the courtyard, beside Rhaegal's still form, tears streaming down her face as she kneels beside her fallen child. The green dragon's eyes are already glazing over, but his sacrifice has saved them all. Jon limps to her side, his own grief matching hers as they mourn the price of victory. "It's over," Ned says quietly, ice still bloody in his hands as he surveys the battlefield. The long night is ended. But even in victory, the cost weighs heavy on them all. Thousands of brave men and women lie dead among the fallen wights, their sacrifice ensuring that life itself could continue. Rhaegal's broken form serves as monument to the courage required to face ultimate darkness and emerge victorious. Bran wheels his chair across the courtyard, his strange eyes reflecting depths no mortal should see. "The threat is ended," he confirms, "but the memory remains. The wheel has been broken, but we must ensure it never turns again." As dawn breaks fully over Winterfell, painting the blood-soaked snow in shades of gold and crimson, the survivors begin the long work of honoring the dead and healing the living. The war for the Dawn is won, but at a price that will be remembered for generations. Dragons circle overhead, fewer now but no less magnificent. The realm has endured its darkest hour and emerged into light, but the scars of this night will mark all who witnessed it. They have looked into the face of extinction and found the courage to say no, preserving not just their own lives, but the possibility of all future life. The long night is over. The dawn has come at last, and in that light, the survivors must build something worthy of the sacrifices made to secure it. The bells of Winterfell ring out across the rebuilding north, their bronze voices carrying hope instead of warning for the first time in living memory. 6 months have passed since the long night ended, and the ancient castle rises renewed from the ashes of battle. Where once stood broken walls now shine white stones quarried from the Vale, while new banners flutter in the spring breeze that speaks of growth instead of death. Representatives from every corner of the 7 kingdoms gather in Winterfell's great hall for a ceremony unlike any in the castle's long history. This is not a celebration of conquest or the crowning of kings, but something far more precious, the formal beginning of peace. Lords who once considered each other enemies now work side by side, their ancient feuds set aside in favor of a common purpose that transcends old grievances. Daenerys Targaryen stands before the assembled crowd, but she no longer bears the title of conqueror. 6 months of marriage to Jon Snow have transformed her from Dragon Queen to something warmer and more enduring, the mother of a united realm. Her hand rests protectively over the growing curve of her belly, where the next generation of the royal line grows strong beneath her heart. "Lords and ladies of Westeros," she begins, her voice carrying clearly through the hall, "we gather not to mourn what was lost in the darkness, but to celebrate what we have built in the light. The realm stands united not by conquest, but by choice, not through fear, but through hope for something better." The ceremony that follows establishes precedents that will echo through generations. The Dragon Council takes formal shape, with representatives elected from each kingdom to serve alongside the crown in governing the realm. For the first time in Westerosi history, the common people will have voices in their own governance, through chosen speakers who understand their needs and struggles. "The wheel is broken," Jon announces as he takes his place beside his wife. Not through destruction, but through transformation. Power will no longer flow only downward, from throne to subject, but upward from people to crown as well. Ned Stark watches the proceedings with quiet satisfaction, the former hand's weathered face showing contentment rather than the burden of command. His duty to the realm is complete, his honor not just restored, but elevated to legend. Tomorrow he will retire to Winterfell permanently, to spend his remaining years teaching his grandchildren about the world they will inherit. "The North remembers," he says simply when called upon to speak. "We remember the price of unity, the cost of peace, and the value of those who sacrificed everything so that others might live. Let that memory guide us in building something worthy of their sacrifice." The new laws proclaimed that day reshape the very foundation of Westerosi society. Serfdom is abolished throughout the 7 kingdoms, replaced by systems that ensure fair wages and treatment for all workers. Trial by combat gives way to trial by jury, with common citizens serving alongside lords to determine justice. The right to petition the crown is extended to every subject, regardless of birth or station. Most significantly, the practice of forcing political marriages ends forever. Young men and women of noble houses will be free to choose their own partners, ending centuries of treating human beings as political tools. Love, rather than alliance, will determine the bonds that shape the future. Dragons circle overhead as the ceremony concludes, but their presence no longer speaks of conquest or threat. Drogon and Viserion have become symbols of protection rather than domination, their flights across the realm carrying messages of hope instead of warnings of war. Children point skyward with wonder rather than fear, and bards compose songs of guardian dragons rather than tales of burning cities. The celebration that follows spans 3 days and reaches every corner of the 7 kingdoms. In King's Landing, small folk dance in streets decorated with dragon banners and winter roses. The Reach hosts great feasts where former enemies share bread and wine. Even Dawn celebrates, their ancient isolation ending as they embrace their place in a truly united realm. But perhaps the most meaningful celebration takes place in the Riverlands, where survivors of the Long Night gather at the Crossroads Inn that has served travelers for generations. Lords and commoners sit at the same tables, sharing stories of the battle and dreams of the peace to come. The innkeeper serves dragon's eggs, sweet pastries shaped like the creatures that saved them all, while minstrels sing new songs of heroes both great and humble. Tyrion Lannister, his golden hair now streaked with grey from the weight of governing a realm at peace, raises his cup in toast. To those who fell in darkness, so that we might live in light. To those who chose unity over division, and to the future we build together. The response echoes from every throat, to the future. In the weeks that follow, the changes ripple throughout Westeros like stones cast into still water. The citadel opens its doors to women for the first time, recognizing that wisdom knows no gender. The faith establishes new temples, dedicated not to war or judgment, but to healing and growth. Trade routes that were severed by years of conflict reopen, bringing prosperity to regions that had known only struggle. The sept bells ring differently now, their cadence speaking of celebration rather than mourning. Wedding bells sound almost weekly as young people, freed from political considerations, choose partners based on affection and compatibility rather than alliance value. Birth bells announce children who will grow up knowing only peace. Letters arrive from across the narrow sea, bringing news that the changes in Westeros inspire hope throughout the known world. In Pentos, the Magisters consider ending slavery entirely. Braavos sends delegations to study the new governmental structures. Even distant Yitai expresses interest in trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. But the most profound change comes in how the people of Westeros see themselves and each other. The shared experience of facing extinction together has forged bonds stronger than any political alliance. Northern lords send aid to Dornish farmers struggling with drought. The Reach shares agricultural innovations with the Iron Islands. The Vale's mountain clans work alongside Riverland smiths to rebuild war-torn villages. We are no longer 7 separate kingdoms, Daenerys observes during a quiet moment with Jon in Winterfell's Godswood. We have become something new, a single people with many traditions, united by common purpose rather than divided by ancient grudges. Jon nods, his hand joining hers over the growing life within her. Our child will never know the world we grew up in. They will inherit something better, a realm where winter is coming speaks of natural seasons, not existential threats. The dragons seem to understand the change as well. Where once they roosted alone atop towers and peaks, now they make their homes in constructed eyries built specifically for their comfort. Children leave offerings of sheep and cattle, but also flowers and small treasures, tokens of affection rather than appeasement. Most remarkably, the dragons have begun to breed again. Drogon has found a mate among the wild drakes that emerged after magic returned to the world, and their eggs promise a future where dragons serve as partners rather than weapons. The sight of dragon hatchlings playing in Winterfell's courtyard, watched over by laughing children, symbolizes the transformation of fear into wonder. As autumn arrives in the first year of the new age, Daenerys gives birth to a daughter whose hair gleams silver gold in the candlelight and whose eyes hold depths of violet fire. The child is named Lyanna, honoring the aunt Jon never knew, but whose memory shaped his father's devotion to honor and truth. The realm celebrates the birth, as if every citizen has gained a new grandchild. Gifts arrive from every corner of Westeros, northern furs soft as clouds, southern silks bright as sunshine, mountain gems that catch the light like captured stars. But the most precious gifts are the letters from common folk, promising to build a world worthy of the princess who will one day help guide it. She will never know the fear we lived with, Daenerys whispers, as she nurses her daughter by the window of Winterfell's highest tower. Below them, the castle bustles with peaceful activity as spring planting begins in earnest. No, Jon agrees, his arm encircling his wife and child as dragons soar overhead in the gentle sunlight. She will inherit a realm where dragons bring hope instead of terror, where lords serve people instead of the reverse, and where the greatest threats come from natural disasters rather than supernatural evil. The wheel that Daenerys once spoke of breaking has indeed been shattered, but something better has taken its place. Not the chaos of revolution, but the careful construction of justice. Not the silence of the grave, but the laughter of children who will never know what it means to fear the dark. Ravens carry news of continued prosperity to every corner of the realm. Harvests grow abundant under peaceful skies. Ships sail between ports without fear of pirates or war. Trade roads bustle with merchants who no longer require armed escorts. The realm prospers as it never has before, watered by the blood of heroes and tended by the hands of the free. The songs they sing now speak not of conquest and revenge, but of love triumphant and hope fulfilled. Bards compose epic verses about the Dragon Queen who chose mercy over vengeance, the bastard who became a king through virtue rather than birth, and the realm that discovered peace was stronger than war. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.